Everybody's busy. We have time to meet here, right? So, yeah, so let's get into it. All right. So, electromagnetic in nature, that's what we all are. That's irrefutable. We know now that we're basically batteries, right? Walking around. So how does that interact with what's going on around us? So, for instance, electromagnetic smog. What does that mean? What is electromagnetic smog? It's made up of electromagnetic radiation and electromagnetic frequencies. And now we have RF EMF, which is the millimeter wave, which everybody's talking about, the 5G. That's that super highway of information. How I talk about 5G is basically explaining it. The easiest way to explain it is like a 2-lane highway, which was 4G at one point, made into an 8-lane highway without any speed limits. That's what you're going to get with 5G. So, you know, all of these things that we're talking about are man-made so far, and the man-made things will interact with us at a physiologic level. So let's get into that. Well, of course, we don't see everything. So, like we were saying before, as we were introduced to this subject, yeah, we have to be open to other things because we don't see it all. So let's get into that quantum level, okay? So the biofield, and we'll get into what that biofield is, but the biofield is made up of, you know, energy. And when we take a look at our what makes us up, we're 99.999% energy and only 0.00001% matter. And what makes up those layers of energy? Well, we have thermal, we have electric, we have magnetic, we have emotional, we have gravity and even levity. And those in relation at a frequency level all translate to light. So let's take a look at the human body. We're basically that perfect antenna. We actually accept frequencies, whether they're radio frequencies or any kind of frequency, really into our system very readily. So there's something you can check out. It's called semi-aqueous crystal liquid phases of DNA. So basically, the DNA is in a aqueous solution that is made up of this crystalline material. Now, what they found from that is that living beings transmit light from cell to cell. This is called an ultra-weak photon emission, okay? So that's a subtle energy that gets put off. So how do we create that? This is a slide here that, you know, it's definitely impactful because we have a
conference call.
The younger you are, the
connect with him. As soon as the call is over, Grandpa and I will call him.
The younger you are, the thinner the skull. So that those radio waves, those frequencies can get deeper and deeper into the brain tissue and cause changes. So let's get into the biofield. How do we create light? So it's from a vortex. So if you think of a vortex, let's take a look at inside the cell. For instance, inside the cell membrane is a perfect antenna that sends frequencies across into the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton actually transmits these frequencies into these microtubules. Inside these microtubules at a subatomic level, they vortex. And even inside the nucleus where the DNA is at, the aqueous solution is in a vortex formation or a vortex action. So that vortex causes a pull from outside and a push from inside. So it's a perpetual motion. And then when you're using crystals, that puts pressure on the crystals, and then you have a piezoelectric reaction that transmits light out of the cell, and light is used to communicate. So at this point, this is the look I get usually when I'm going through this, right? So now let's look. We're not the only ones looking at what the biofield can do. There's over 150 different papers, research papers now on the human biofield and how to actually how to explain it, how to figure out how it works, and what it can do for us. This slide's an interesting slide because biogeometry of the DNA. So it was a few doctors figured out that the DNA actually follows a lattice of geometry, and that lattice actually harnesses the frequency to keep the geometry of DNA in line, so to speak, or together, strengthening the bonds. Anyway, the biofield impacts our health. This is a picture of a leaf. I'm sure some of you have seen this before, where the top of the leaf was actually cut off, completely removed, and they took a Correllian photograph of it, and you can still see the top of it there because it has an energy signature. The biofield still had an energy signature left behind. So when we talk about that vortexing action, we also talk about detoxification and neutrifying the actual cell itself. So if you have a cell that's operating at high frequency, there's a great electrical charge there, then you have a nice bright light coming from that living part of the body, right? Or the living body, right? We have to remember that the electricity is a product of light. So really it's all light. So in some of these articles, I can't remember which one exactly, but it was interesting because they were finding that cancer cells, for instance, didn't have any light emitting from them. And we know that cancer cells have a reduced charge, electrical charge in them. So why would they put off hardly any light anyway, or any light? They really didn't even detect the light coming off of those cells. They didn't specify whether they were daughter cells or stem cells, but that's a whole other thing. But it was very interesting, an interesting aspect. A sick cell does not put off light. So we consume light, right? Through all these great vegetables and fruit, we actually consume about, I think it was 10,000 photons in a serving of healthy fruits and vegetables. And what do we get from all those fruits and vegetables? And you guys are probably going to talk about this, but those great enzymes that transmit light as well. So let's see, the strength and size of the average biofield. A male is a little bit bigger. They're 4 meters. They're supposed to be about 4 meters. Female is 3 meters. And what we've found with all of our different photography, Correllian gas discharge visualization, heart rate variability, all these things that we're doing, we find that it diminishes down to a few inches. And that's because, when you're operating at a dimmer level, basically when that crystal that's in the cell, because all of our cells are made up of semi-crystalline matrix. So when those crystals are distorted from, let's say, a radio frequency or electromagnetic field, that actually bends them and refracts the light. The light, remember, as I was saying, is a method of communication. Remember, we can they did a study where you shined a light on the bottom of the foot, and on a brain scan, it actually showed up in the occipital lobe faster than what a nerve can transmit. And then they even compared it with shining the light through the eye to see how fast it got to the occipital lobe, and shining it on the bottom of the foot actually got there faster. Now, how did that happen? The explanation that I would give, it's the biofield doing that. It's transferring that information so quick, because the speed of light we now know is variable. It's not that constant number that we always thought. So we're hit with things. We get hit with all sorts of things from our surroundings, and that damages the DNA. You damage the DNA. That they know now that when you damage the DNA, you can actually damage the efflux of the calcium ion channels in the cell, which makes the cell more permeable, which is not necessarily a good thing, because you can allow different types of challenges to toxins to come into the cell, and not allow those toxins to leave the cell. The same with the nutrients. You can't allow those nutrients in. So then the cell will become less healthy, of course, to say the least. And then that also depolarizes the mitochondria. And if you have a sick mitochondria, definitely have sick cells. And then they did a study with infertility. People that were in the vicinity, I think the study was the people that were in the vicinity of a cell tower. They had 30% decrease in sperm activity. This one was the eye, a bovine eye. They put what would be the equivalent to a cell phone near the eye, and the eye started bubbling up at a microscopic level, and then more at a macro level. The macro level was irreversible, leading to blindness in the cow. And then, of course, melatonin. Melatonin is greatly reduced because it affects the pineal gland so much. The EMF affects the pineal gland so much. And when your melatonin goes down, risk of cancer goes up. We know that through studies, but it greatly reduces melatonin production. So cell phones, yeah. We could wait around and say, you know, let's do a bunch of studies for another 20 some years and see where that gets us. But it's quickly looking like this picture. So all of those environmental stressors, the electromagnetic smog, punch holes in our biofield, as you can see at the top. At the bottom, they actually were wearing the pendant, the Hedron pendant, but at the top they had nothing on. So we resonate with the Schumann resonance. Everybody knows, or I hope everybody will know after this, that the Schumann resonance actually is synergistic with our brainwave. We need that ionosphere to be taking place so that strengthens our biofield, because when I talked about those vortexes within the cells and in the microtubules, what drives those vortexes? It's like an indirect perpetual motion system, an indirect energy creation. But what drives those vortexes? Well, it's the Schumann resonance. It's that pulse of the earth that we're so deeply connected with that actually drives that vortex to keep it spinning. And that's important, because, you know, when you look at life without food, you're looking at, you know, a survival of 40 days or more. Without food or water, it's 8 to 21 days. Within the first few days, the kidneys start to decline in function. And then without an ionosphere, the Schumann resonance, less than an hour, your heart rate becomes erratic. Within 1 hour, your short-term memory declines. 24 to 48 hours, you experience high stress, anxiety, or panic, bouts of psychosis, nausea, migraine, headaches, and you know, it just keeps going on the list. But the study was terminated in the 1960s. This was the Weaver study. He put a bunch of students in a bunker and slowly took out the Schumann resonance. He was able to take out the Schumann resonance from the bunker, and these were his results. He did it a couple times, but then he terminated the study because it just wasn't good. And then Russian cosmonaut, actually, he was up in space and they didn't have a Schumann resonance device at that time, the first one that was up in space, and he started to go a little crazy after about an hour and a half. Yeah, we definitely need that Schumann resonance to support our biofield. So electromagnetic smog, electromagnetic interference, the major sources of, obviously most people know this, with 5G, it's the 5G towers that are going up, and in the satellites, the how many, 7,000 satellites was the last number I heard on that. And the purpose of that is if we only have the cell phone towers only operating off of the cell phone towers only go about 300 meters with the 5G, and they only do 2 to 8 homes, where the 4G did 200 to 800 homes with one cell phone tower, which is why we need so many more cell phone towers. And trees block 5G, and walls will block 5G. But now if you hook them to a bunch of satellites all over the earth, now they can get through those areas much easier. They still need a lot of towers, but you can get through the obstacles much easier. Let's see, how are we doing on time? I'm pretty close up. All right, so smart meters, that's a big one that gets into the house. We found a solution for that, a bigger solution for that. Cell phone, of course, computers, Wi-Fi, electronic cars or electric cars, and smart homes now are the big thing. So yeah, these are all the different devices here. We have the home harmonizer, we have the pendant, and the cell shield. We also have a smart, specific smart meter shield. Let's see, these are some of the other ones. Let's take a look here. So what makes Hedron different, right? We have a way to put the frequency in, let's see, yeah, we have a way to put the frequency, impregnate it. We have a special technology to impregnate the frequency, especially the 7.83 hertz, which is that Schumann resonance, into crystals and minerals. So what we do, some of the crystals and minerals, especially quartz is really something that you need to find that's very pure. And I think we've done a really good job at that, because quartz always has lead in it if you get crappy stuff, really. And then you have the copper, the iron, gold, silver. Shungite is a big one. Shungite is what makes most of our products black, because we have the shungite in there. And then the quartz and the other minerals are inside. We use some monoatomic minerals, which basically Ormus minerals as well. We have that in a conductive gel, which squeezes the crystals inside the device. And then the Hedron symbol itself is a foiled antenna on the top. So that's your output. And basically it makes a toroid around the device itself. The big key to this is the ratio of material used. It's 1 to 7.1 is the ratio that we use. That is a very big deal. And maybe Jason can actually appreciate this. If you space those if you add all those numbers up, it comes out to 9 with Tesla 369. And then the Hedron device is its own energy generator, basically because it is in that resin that squeezes the crystals, causing a piezoelectric reaction consistently. And then when you place it on a phone, for instance, your phone has a battery and it has a power output source. That only drives that, puts more of those crystals under stress, which drives more of that 7.83 hertz to output from your phone. So it's like tagging your phone with a piece of earth, the frequency of earth. Right. Yeah, so we do all of these things, dark field microscopy, the Kirlian thermography, blood pressure. VIA and phase angle, that's relatively a new one, but that's very interesting. Phase angle is basically showing, you could, to simplify it, it's like the electrical charge of the cell. And then the BioWell Life Systems is the new Russian version. We've been using that more to check out DNA, which is pretty neat. It's actually CIEMS. I misspelled that. Sorry, but it's California Institute of Electronics and Mechanical Sciences there. So this is a report that we had, or a study that we had done that they checked out. They took our device and they took 3 samples, random samples, and tested it. So there's some confusion on reading this. So I'm gonna try and clarify that up right now. The signal absorption percent, so meaning what it absorbs as far as electromagnetic radiation or EMR is concerned, we're in the 90%, 99 percentiles on all of it, which is great because you're absorbing a ton of that radiation from a cellular device. The shield decibel, that is basically, and we separated that. So it says SAPW and SAM. So basically the SAPW means the electrical field. The SAM is the magnetic field. So we had to separate those out so we knew what we were doing here. So we knew, you know, what how was it affecting it electrically? How was it affecting it magnetically? So we did the same. They did the same over on those other 2 columns. That's describing the power, because it's a decibel, it's the value of the power output of what they were doing, the power output that they were exposing the device to. That's all that is over there. That's the power output of the exposure. Relatively consistent. I believe the top power output was like, it was in the 30s. The top power output was in the 30s. I can't remember that number. 33, I think. It was at 33 point something. So we did really well as far as that's concerned there, as far as those results. And these were all of the different instruments they checked against our device. So you can look through those, and I mean, these are all checking variations in electrical and magnetic dispersion there. And these are the therms. We have a ton of therms that we've done on people. We have a bunch of them. So this is just one example. The top, they had used a cell phone unprotected. The bottom, they used a cell phone protected. Same time on each of those.
Much different. A little bit right in here.
All right, pulse rate. it was able to consistently keep it down, not shooting up over the 80 mark, which was